What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the third episode of the Cornered Podcast. Once again, I have with me my good friend, Afton.
I'm his brother.
You're my friend now.
Okay.
Today, we're going to be talking about the video game Y2K.
A postmodern RPG.
Also known as YIIK, or YIIK IV.
Well, that's the new version.
We'll talk about that later. For now, we're going to be talking about YIIK, a postmodern RPG, which is what the game originally released under. The game was released by AckkStudios, which is made up of two brothers.
Wait. What?
Hold on. AckkStudios made a game called Two Brothers.
And it was made
by two brothers.
PIIK.
That doesn't make sense right now, but you see, the two brothers, previously aforementioned, Andrew and Brian Allenson, are both named in the video game YIIK, so they are canon to the lore in some sense. But they are also, are they the two brothers? Because we haven't played that one.
Only one way to find out.
Anyways, we are supposed to be talking about YIIK, a postmodern RPG. Y2K was released in 2019. It was an RPG that released to critical madness.
Yeah, it was a very mixed reception. Well, I say mixed, but I'm pretty sure most
of it was unwarranted, actually.
True. But a lot of people dogged on the game because the main character, Alex Eggleston, was
very unlikable.
And that was on purpose, but at the same time, some of the critics did have fair points that it might have been a bit too untempered by other things happening.
Yeah. Another criticism that people piled up upon the game was that the main story writer, Andrew Allenson, came out saying in an interview something along the lines of, "My biggest misunderstanding was thinking that games were a work of art," which was not taken very well as a deflection of criticism. So people dogged on him for that, and also claimed that Alex was a self-insert of him.
Which turned out to be false.
Yeah.
Of course.
Basically, aside from that one line, which, people change and all that, everything was basically made up against the game, or blown way out of proportion.
There was some
things were real, but most of it was just blown out of extreme proportion with the fact that the game already was pretty cynical in its way of everything.
Though, one thing that was very fairly pointed out was the combat system. My goodness, the combat system in the original version, it is interesting, but it's hard to put the right word to it. It's pretty much playing timing. It's rhythm. It's micro games. It's like tiny mini games to hit the attacks.
It's a lot of different micro games. So they have to press the button at the right time, spam the button, or tons of different. Basically, it's all different variations of that. And most of the time, they don't really feel good. They're nice sometimes, but the battle system as a whole just
felt clunky.
It felt janky. But the game itself, I will stand that game was peak. Y2K's gameplay surrounds basically the same archetypes as a lot of other RPGs like Earthbound, where you walk around multiple different towns talking to people to progress the story, and you also fight monsters. But unlike those games where the monsters are mostly random encounters, YIIK has a set amount of monsters. And once you kill them all, there's no way to get them back until the IV update came out, where they added a item that would allow you to revive them. But YIIK, everything's limited, and that includes your money, which you gain from the monsters. So you can't go spending willy-nilly.
And therefore you can't get infinite healing items. You gotta be reservative about them.
You gotta make sure that you are either saving for the right equipment or just spending randomly for fun.
Yeah.
Because we all like spending, right? Anyways,
on to the story. The story, I feel like it is good. Like, the only problem that I had with it was if you actually, for the most part, if you really like read between the lines upside down doing a backflip, you can figure it out, but it's a bit unclear about what the what
Main
was going
meaning.
on, what the main meaning was, because if you and that was only like confirmed in like a video that was posted about a secret ending that might not even be in the game. We don't know, but it was like posted by I'm pretty sure one of the brothers, Allison brothers. But that actually made the entire game story make sense in hindsight, and if they would have hinted at it more clearly, instead of you needing to pretty much go looking out of your way, doing a decker backflip, reading between the lines.
But to be fair, a lot of games do that nowadays. And like Five Nights at Freddy's, for example, the only way that you could learn the story is if you looked up external materials.
True, but that's a bit different because the fun from that game, that game is not a story-based game. That's here's a gameplay trying to survive the animatronics. This gameplay, it's a story game. It's a story RPG. It's focused on the story.
Yeah.
So there's a bit. So it can get away with it. They just did it, and it's fine. But they just didn't handle it as well as I think they could have. But overall, once you know the fact, we're not gonna spoil it, but the base game makes sense.
Yes.
I do think that they could have probably they focused a bit. They didn't really have anything to oppose Alex's
personality,
which they do fix in.
They don't interrupt. They had a lot of characters clash with his personality and be mad at him, but that was only in the text dialogues. Yeah. Which also, I just realized that's how the gameplay also differs from a lot of other RPGs, is that YIIK is very story heavy.
Yeah.
You will fight in a dungeon after listening and playing through about like a half-hour story segment.
Okay, going back to my point about how I was feeling about Alex not being not being opposed outside, not opposed like in dialogue, but like nothing to contrast with him outside of being combated against in dialogue. My mind got clouded because that point's mute, because what I was just thinking of in my mind was me not liking the game when we first played it, but that was because I'm now realizing because the combat system just clouded my memory of the game, because that was such a bad aspect of the game that it spoiled like the entire game for me.
Now it's time for the redemption arc. YIIK! It took about like 4 years to come out. It probably only took 3, but basically about 2 years after YIIK came out, they announced that they were going to do a massive reworking of the game to what they originally intended it to be, story-wise and gameplay-wise, because they themselves felt like the game was a bit underwhelming or like underbaked. So basically, it took a ton of release date cancellations, reschedulings, changes, whatever other synonyms for changing release dates, for about 3 years until YIIK IV finally released in late 2024.
YIIK IV added it rehauled combat to actually be good. In the map, you can actually run now, which is a nice quality of life.
It was needed.
The map is decently big.
Yeah. As mentioned before, you can now respawn enemies with an item.
Even though that's only in
post game.
Yeah, post game, yeah.
But still.
But the post game is overhauled. Basically everything is overhauled.
Not even overhauled. I think the post game was like added.
Oh yeah, post game was added. But they also overhauled the mine dungeon, which is how you leveled up. But they've overhauled it to be its own unique area where you go around leveling up instead of being this one screen, which really was a good addition.
The original Mine Dungeon looked cool, but the new one is psychedelic themed.
And it actually has
stuff to do.
Meanwhile, the other one was literally
It was just a static area, and then you walk around and level up. But anyways, back to the topic of combat, they completely overhauled it. Instead of being a normal turn-based RPG combat, you're now in something which in-universe is called the Dark Game, where you're playing around with Carta, which are cards. YIIK is a card game now.
The combat is still turn-based, but now everything takes place on a timeline where the speed of your action is based on the chosen attack and your character's speed.
Aside from that, the other main mechanic is the aforementioned Carta, which acts as a shield for each character. Each character can have 3 Carta equipped, and they each have different effects based on if they are holding them in their hand or if they can use them. But then, you can't have that in your hand anymore. But basically, they act as a shield. So when you attack the enemy, it depletes the health of the Carta that's way in front of them in the line of the 3 that they're holding. And then, once you finally attacked through all of their Carta, or all of their Carta has been used, you can attack them and cause them to bleed. And then they will slowly bleed out to death every turn. But you can also attack them to make them die faster.
Yeah, that's how attacking works. But besides from that, they've added a whole bunch of new story content and lore, which makes the game much better. But this is more of a gameplay review, not a lore review. We don't want to spoil it, but they've added a lot more of it, even throughout the story, breaking up the gameplay, and it really just benefited the game.
Yeah. So basically, YIIK came in and saved the game, which is kind of sad how long it took, because literally no one knows that YIIK existed. We are the only 2 people in the universe who know of its existence outside of the YIIK Discord and 2,000 other people.
But YIIK
is PIIK. For today's closing remark, if you say no at the end of YIIK, you get an 8-hour sequel. Bye! Have fun!